coming to chat with me. I really appreciate it.
Great pleasure.
You and I have some history together, and frankly, in the scope of my life, it was actually one of the proudest moments I ever had. You supported me. I put forth a proposal to the Conservative Party of Canada. I put a policy recommendation in, and it made it from New Brunswick. It made it to the Quebec Convention, and I think, as far as I know, it might be the very first policy that ever hit the Conservative Party of Canada's floor that had the word cannabis in it. We were asking the Conservative Party to adopt the abolition of tax on medical cannabis. And you were gracious enough to come with me and speak on behalf of the bill and support it. And I remember, you were the first one up to speak, and you gave the preamble, because we had to debate the policy to try to get it through the floor. Everybody in the room had to vote on it. And you said, you could add to this, but from my memory, you said something to the effect of, cannabis saved my life, and it works, and it saved me, and there shouldn't be tax on medicine. And I just remember standing there being so grateful that you offered to support that maneuver, and that you got up there in front of a room of, I think it was 400 other Conservatives, and spoke on behalf of that bill. And the fact that we even were there in the first place was overwhelming. I mean, we got a lot of side eyes handed out the policy.
Historic.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about that from your end as well,
I'm one of the, as I said at that convention, I'm one of the 1% of Canadians whose medical cannabis has no taxes. As a veteran, through Veterans Affairs, my medicine is paid for.
Yeah.
And I don't pay taxes. Whereas the rest of the country, they have to pay tax on top. There shouldn't be tax on penicillin. There shouldn't be a tax on medicine that helps people. And in my mind, this is as valuable a medicine as penicillin. Penicillin has saved tens of thousands of lives since it was invented through Canadian laboratories. And here we are now later, folks like yourselves leading the way with medical cannabis. It's going to continue to save lives and provide my demographic, the veteran community, support, life-saving support. So to go to Quebec and speak at that convention and try to get that tax rescinded, at least on their radar, it's one of those things where we were unsuccessful, but there were 60 motions on the floor, and only 10 could go forward.
Yeah.
So, all those other motions, everything from child sexuality to security in Canada and all the different issues that we were facing at that convention, we at least got it on the table. And your initiative to get to a national level, to get it on the table, which has never been done before, it's historic. It's a hell of a first step.
Yeah.
But we're not done yet. And we'll continue to push and make sure the nation understands, as do the veterans, that 1% of our nation who gets it tax-free. But this is medicine, and it shouldn't be taxed, and it should be available to everybody. So well done for Stewart Farms getting it done.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. We didn't get it through. It didn't end up getting adopted. It was a gut punch. But come to find out, perhaps if we were in a different room, there was 3 different rooms where policies were voted on. And we happened to end up, I think our room was the medical and legal policy room, where the majority of the most social conservatives were in our room. So we were up against an even larger mountain to climb than we wanted to be. Whereas if maybe we had been in the room with the environmental policies and health, or finance. Sorry, we were in the health.
That's right.
We were in the health room. There was the health policies and the justice policies. So because it was health and justice, we were in the most socially conservative room. If we had been in the environment and financial room, which arguably we might have been able to put the policy in that bucket. But hindsight's 2020. We would have been in the room with all the BC conservatives, because they were there for the environment policies.
Exactly.
It was such a learning experience, and maybe it still might not have got through. But we both know it would have stood a phenomenally better chance of getting through if we were just in one of the different 3 rooms where the policy sat. So that was a major learning curve. But you're right. I was honored to get there and to be there. And in that moment, it is one of the most proud moments I've had in my career so far, because it was just, it was like, I think Scott Reed, the only conservative MP who voted for cannabis legalization during the Harper era, when the Trudeau government put it through. I believe he was offside of the party but he voted with his constituents. He supported us as well, and what a fantastic,
Stood right by your side. Yeah.
what a fantastic guy. But I think he described it likened to walking into the fiery pits of hell holding a bunch of snowballs. But the fact that we made it in with the snowballs,
That's the history.
was good. But I, hopefully we can go back at that again. And so tell Trevor, why don't you jump into tell me about your time serving in the military. What is your military title, and just talk a little bit about those years of service.
I was an infantry soldier in the Canadian Armed Forces. I served with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry and the Canadian Airborne Regiment. I was a sergeant when I was medically retired. I was medically retired after service all around the world, the United Nations. I served in the Mediterranean. I served in Europe. I was all over the world doing different operations and courses. I was a mountain warfare instructor, so I climbed Monte Bianco, the highest mountain in Europe, and dozens of peaks. And the Monte Bianco Massif and Grand Paradiso all over France and Germany and England. We started climbing the Snowdonia. I was a mountain warfare instructor. Reconnaissance was my role. I was a Pathfinder platoon in the Airborne Regiment and a Recce platoon in the PPCLI, which means we're the ones who go in first and basically come out last. We gather intelligence on the enemy to give to the commanding officer what he has to face when he makes his battle plan. Mm-hmm. So as a reconnaissance soldier, and as a mountain warfare soldier, and as a person who was active all the time, I was posted to the Airborne Regiment, which is jumping out of airplanes. I did hundreds of parachute descents. I had one close call in the Arctic where a toboggan, which carries your explosives and equipment, went through my parachute lines at night, but it was night. I couldn't see what it was. I just landed hard and realized later what had happened, how close I'd come. Mm. But in hundreds of parachute descents, I never, ever had a problem. My last jump with the Airborne Regiment, I was acting platoon warrant for Recce platoon. I had a young gentleman who hadn't jumped in 7 years in the same aircraft I was in. He froze in the door, and he was either shoved or fell out of the aircraft, which causes a dribbler exit, we call it. And instead of jamming himself out into the slipstream of the engine, which then opens your chute, he was thrown under the aircraft. Oh, no. And I was leaving the aircraft on the other side, and I felt a heavy blow to the left-hand side of my body. I thought maybe I'd struck the aircraft, because that can happen. I all of a sudden had a perfect, beautiful canopy. I was hearing people yelling above me and around me, and I realized that somebody was out of control above me. And this unconscious jumper, he came down through my lines, through my chute, caused our chutes to wrap, and we were headed towards Mother Earth at terminal velocity, which is just over 100 miles an hour. I got my jump knife out, and I slashed all my own lines, because he'd gone through my lines, and his reserve and his legs were wrapped around my lines. So I couldn't deploy my reserve until I was free of that. I cut him free. I got free at 180 feet, which is 18 stories. I deployed my reserve. It takes 240 feet for a reserve to open. I had enough out to save my life. It was November. The ground was frozen. The drop zone was frozen. So I struck the ground and shattered both taluses in my feet. The talus is the large bone in your foot. 41 fractures in my right tibia platform. Drove my right femur into my bowel. Burst fracture of the fourth lumbar, compression of the fifth. Shattered all the teeth in my head. I had 19 surgeries. I was 2 years in hospital, starting out with paralysis, and eventually had to learn how to walk again in my late 20s. The pain from the orthopedic side of things, in those days, they would prescribe Arthrotec, naproxen, all the different anti-inflammatories. And after years of Department of National Defense giving me literally 3 months at a time, a brown paper bag full of chemicals, what that was doing to my body was starting to show an effect when the medical marijuana came on everybody's radar and it was becoming available. So through Veterans Affairs, I applied for and was granted the ability to use it, which I use to this day. And it makes a big difference.
Now, how old were you when that incident
28
happened?
years old.
You were 28 years old, and you're heading your way into 19 surgeries after this incident. And tell me about what was that progression, and you say you ended up on that was a brown paper bag of opioids and painkillers that you ended up on throughout this whole course of treatment.
I was in those 19 surgeries. They spread them out, so it was 2 years by the time I was done.
Yeah.
So 2 years of heavy, and twice I found myself addicted. They would give me the morphoids in the hospital, and they would give you your own ability to punch yourself when you wanted to get rid of the pain. And then they would give you these bags of pills. And I remember reading
the morphine button.
Morphine button, and you could just punch away kind of thing and make yourself snowed. And that's the human thing to do, to kind of keep yourself snowed if you can. But it led to addiction twice. The first time, I remember getting my records after I released from the military medically, and I remember reading in there saying how patient, his entire conversation is about his next medication, because what they would do is they would give you the morphine needle, and they would give you the pills, or they'd allow you to pump yourself up. And then when that came to the point where there was a problem, they started to wean me back. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay. And I remember saying to the nurses, I'm allowed every 2 hours. And if I call at the 2 hour point, by the time you guys get here, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. So should I call 15 minutes early? Like, I was addicted.
Yeah.
And they realized it, I realized it, but I was in a hospital setting that time. So they weaned me off it, and they did their best to cleanse my system of it, which never works.
Yeah.
When I was released, I noticed myself that I was starting to become fixated on the medicine, and I weaned myself off that time. And then with medical marijuana, the anti-inflammatories, the morphoids, all that stuff, there comes a point where you can feel your liver getting hard. You can feel your body paying the price of all the chemical warfare that you're doing to it. So I'd known fellows in the Israeli army who were using medical marijuana, and in the Canadian system, guys who had been experimenting with it. And then as it got legalized and it got to the point where the systems were in place, I was one of the first here in New Brunswick to get online.
So how many years ago? What age was that at?
8 years ago now.
8 years ago. So you were one of the first to get on medical marijuana 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's it's one of those things where I was open to it because I met gentlemen who served with the Israeli army who are using it, and they're in heavy combat and a complex combat with civilians involved. All my service, every time that something stuck in my brain that hurt me inside, was military service interacting with civilians in a zone where it never goes good for them. They teach you how to physically and mentally prepare for your military service, but they can't teach you how to emotionally deal with it. And that's the gray areas that starts to leave scars and starts to leave damage to you. And then the option to just take more morphine or more morphoids is what they want.
So were you taking prescription painkillers right up until 8 years ago, more or less?
And I mean, when I got the option to go on medical marijuana, I went cold turkey.
Yeah.
I never had to go back to the morphoids. I never had to go back to inflammatories. The THC took care of any kind of pain that I had, or the mental acceptance of the pain I had to accept. And CBDs during the day allowed me to be mobile. And with serious orthopedic surgery, like, it works. Like, if a guy who's like got the injuries I have can get on a motorcycle, which is what I did. I had a young gentleman take his life while we were on the phone, and I begged him not to do it. And when he took his life while we were speaking on the phone, I realized that alcohol wasn't working for him, wasn't working for me, and I had to do better. So once I got into the medical marijuana program, I got on my motorcycle and I started veteran outreach. And I've been doing that for 19 plus years now. We're almost in our 20th year of being on the road 24/7.
Yeah.
I've ridden across Canada 19 times, as many times as I had surgery. I've ridden from Newfoundland to Vancouver Island, touched base in Yellowknife and every other city across the country.
Yeah.
I formed a veterans organization that's at 1,400 strong in 84 cities across Canada. And it was my role to visit each one of those groups and watch them do charitable work and to help veterans help themselves and their communities. And I couldn't have done that without THC at night and CBD during the day. I just couldn't have done it.
So what were the specific physical and mental differences pre-cannabis medicine and post-cannabis medicine? What were the key things that enabled you to get out and do all this work, whereas you might not have felt able to do it when you were on the morphines.
Morphoid, it like I said before, it snows you. You just go into the twilight zone.
Yeah.
And your body's numb, your mind is numb, your reaction with the world is numb. And I lost years and years of doing that to myself, doing a prescribed procedure, which the doctors told me was the answer. And then with medical marijuana, the different strains allow you to experiment with different effects on your body because everybody's different. I've always been 200 pounds plus and able to absorb great amounts of alcohol before it starts to affect me. Whereas with marijuana, the morphoids and all the different anti-inflammatories and stuff, they just whack you.
Yeah.
They just put you down. Whereas with, like in my case, when I'm on the road with CBD during the day, anti-inflammatories in my mind kind of cause your joints. And every one of my injuries, all my shattered bones were at a joint,
Yeah.
which is really bad. If you break a bone on the straight, it heals and you can get around it. But every time you have a shattered injury on a joint, you're talking long-term effects. And the morphoids and things, you really didn't feel anything because you were just snowed. Whereas CBD during the day, your mind is clear, and yet that lubricating sort of feeling that you get with anti-inflammatories on these broken joints and elbows and spine, it negates that feeling, and you're not snowed, you're not unconscious while being conscious.
So is the pain relief equivalent, would you say? Or is the pain relief a little bit less, but you've got clarity of mind and the little bit extra pain that you feel with CBD and THC versus a very powerful opioid is worth the trade-off?
When you're laying in that hospital bed and you got your own pump handle, you can punch that thing as much as you want. That's kind of the equivalent of what it was like when they released you from the military and they give you these big brown paper bags full of drugs.
Yeah.
And you get used to that. And all of a sudden years go by. Whereas with medical marijuana, it doesn't make the pain go away. The pain never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
In the airborne regiment, we used to tease each other and say, pain is your best friend. It lets you remind yourself you're still alive.
Yeah.
Well, I feel very alive every single moment I'm awake. But the CBD during the daytime, it doesn't make the pain go away, but that easing in each one of those injured areas, it's like I say, it almost feels like a lubrication, like the anti-inflammatories allow you to sort of ignore for a moment that joint where that injury happened. With CBD, like you say, your mind is clear, and yet you've got that lubricating factor around all my injuries. At nighttime, you take the THC after a long day in the saddle. I just rode from Grand Prairie, Alberta to do a speech in Halifax a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
5,400 kilometers. I did it in 4 days.
Wow.
And that's hard riding.
Yeah.
That's 1,000 plus K a day.
Yeah.
With the construction that's going on across the country, with the infrastructure that's not being looked after, bridges and potholes.
Yeah.
I rode through Saskatoon and I was speaking with the mayor of Saskatoon and I said, you got to fix those 3 potholes on the other side of town. They just about killed me.
Yeah.
And he laughed. He said, we spend millions of dollars and all we do is we move those same 3 potholes around the town all year long. Well, it's kind of funny to them, but when you're weeping because you've just come through pothole after pothole, frost heave after frost heave, with CBD it's tolerable. But at night what happens is your body takes all that punishment.
Yeah.
And at nighttime the THC allows you to convince your mind that everything's better. Television's funny again. And it's at the point where you can heal.
Yeah.
And at nighttime, having been on CBD during the day and THC at nighttime, I use luminarium during the day if it's not going to have to go anywhere. CBD primarily when I'm on a machine or riding or driving, but luminarium during the day when I don't have anything to do. And it's one of those strains that makes you, rather than lay around and feel the pain, it gives you in my case, it gives me the energy to maybe paint the house.
Yeah.
Or do something physically active and do my emails and do my work or maintain my motorcycle. Whereas the THC at night, it allows me to stop and heal. So the next morning when I get on, there's still pain, residual pain from the day before, from all those potholes and frost heaves, all the construction. But you're at a better place than if you'd just gone day after day after day with the morphoids laying in bed doing nothing. It's making such a difference in my life that having changed my method of outreach, instead of using alcohol and talking to buddies on the phone that kill themselves because that doesn't work, it's got me to the point where I've not only been able to myself get out and be active, but to engage others. And I'm doing it right because 7 years ago, they took me to Rideau Hall, where the Governor General of Canada presented me with the Meritorious Service Medal for contributing $7.5 million to charity across Canada. And I couldn't have done any of that if it wasn't for medical marijuana.
And that's through your charity rides, bike rides that you host every year. So I want to get back to that in a minute, but first I want to ask you, why did you join the military in the first place? What was the driving force behind that?
It's kind of the family trade.
Yeah.
My ancestors all served in the Second World War. They had a heavy contribution. 7 of the lads on my mom's side and 7 of the lads on my dad's side served, and 1 was killed in each side of the family. So when I was growing up, all my uncles and aunts, war bride aunts and uncles who'd been in Italy and gone all the way to Holland to the end of the war, and then Korea after that. The military has always drawn someone from our family. So as a kid, I was always envious of their experience and being around the world. And the war side, when I grew up, the Vietnam War was on. So television was full of war.
Yeah.
There was kids my age, a couple of years older than I am, loading mortar tubes in Quezon San in Vietnam. So the military always had that kind of connection to my generation. And I knew from the ones we'd lost, we had 1 killed in Italy and 1 boy killed in France. And I would talk to my other uncles like, tell me about them. And they told me what wonderful people they were and what contribution they made to our nation. And the ones who would be willing to talk about the war, they would talk about it. And in my mind, I wanted the ones who didn't talk about the war, that made me want to serve more. Because whatever they'd seen, whatever they'd done, it affected them so much that it was something that I just had to find out on my own. So I graduated from high school, and I didn't go to prom. I was on the train to Cornwallis to basic training. And it was a natural fit for me. It was one of those things where it was like I was born to do the job.
Yeah.
And I would have done it right till the end of my career had I not been injured.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I wished, I still dream about it. I would jump out of an aircraft today if they let me. The only problem is, and again, the THC at night helps you with things like this.
Yeah.
The human brain is a funny thing.
Yeah.
I have seen myself, as real as if I'm talking with you right now, strike the ground like I did that day all those years ago. Every night it wakes me up, just as real as if it happened minutes ago.
Yeah.
And when I sit up in bed, there's no bloody teeth. I shattered all my teeth when I hit. There's no boiling lava feeling in my bowels. My legs aren't at strange angles. I realize I'm in bed again. But because of the THC, I can sort of slowly go through it. It's that dream again.
Yeah.
And I can slowly fixate on other things. Whereas with morphine or alcohol, you just wake up the next morning more tired and more confused than you were the day before. And then during the day, the CBD, you're back on the bike, active again in your community. You're doing your best to help out. And it's been a life changer. I'm sure it's saved my life.
So what triggered, after you did your service? It was a calling, obviously. It felt like you were following your calling. You were following your family tradition and your lineage, which is incredibly admirable. And talk a little bit about what you're doing today. How did you raise all that money? How did you end up at Rideau Hall, and how did you land on that? How did you start running these charitable bike rides?
I basically kept myself snowed with the brown bag of drugs and alcohol, which was what those uncles of mine did when they came back from the Second World War. There was no medical marijuana. Of course, marijuana was bad up until the recent times. And yet I served with Israelis who'd been in complex situations with civilians involved, as I was, and it was helping them. I had a soldier who we witnessed a horrible event overseas at one point. And for 5 years, I'd be drunk and he'd be drunk, and we'd phone each other every Friday night. And he phoned me one night and he wanted to talk about a 10-year-old whose body we removed from one of these scenes. And I didn't want to talk about that kid anymore because my son was now 10 years old. And I told my buddy, I said, I want to talk about this. And he said he wanted to talk about it. I said, I don't want to talk about it. And he said, that's it. He said, that's it. And clack, he got the phone. So the next morning, like it had happened for the last 5 years, he would phone me at 6 o'clock in the morning and he'd apologize. Except this time it was the Calgary police. They're in his apartment with his phone records, and they wanted to know what we're talking about at 2:35 in the morning when he shot himself to death through the phone. He was trying to teach me a lesson, and the lesson struck deep. I'd let him down. I'd let one of my own soldiers, a brother of mine, down. And drugs, the morphoids and keeping snowed all the time wasn't working. Alcohol wasn't working. The medical marijuana, when I came online with medical marijuana, I got on a motorcycle. I was now physically and mentally able to get on a motorcycle and do long distance riding. I went to a ride in Kingston, Ontario. I met a young Vandu, a fellow who just come back from the fighting in the Namibic pocket in Yugoslavian conflict, and he was in pain. He was hurting. I would say that he was near death if he hadn't had some outreach from somebody. So I took him under my wing. They taught us to look after each other. And he was a motorcyclist, as was I. I met him at a charity ride for Dad event, which is prostate cancer outreach. He had his back up against a brick wall. He was freaked out by all the people around him, and I thought right away, this guy's served. So I went and I stood beside him and I introduced myself, and we became brothers at that moment. We rode that next ride and all the other ones that summer. And it had this idea in my head of a motorcycle organization, because when you're on a motorcycle, you can't use alcohol.
Yeah.
You can't use drugs. You can't argue, because you got to maintain forward momentum. You got to keep rolling. So I always had an idea of having an outreach through motorcycles organization. And this guy was a website guy. He knew how to write a website. Mm-hmm. So the very first website was a one-pager. It had the logo, which is a World War II dispatch rider popping a wheelie, which I got permission from the artist's estate to use. I went to an embroidery place and I said, I'd like to get these crests made. And I was thinking a little small round crest you wear over your heart, so he could be identified as a veteran in his community. And they said, well, it's $240 for a 6-inch circle, or $280 for a 10 by 11 inch square. So that's what I went with, the big square. And I had 2 vests, $25 vests you get at a bike show, with the crest sewn on them. I gave one to him and I had one. And he right away created a web page with that identity on it. And right away we were being inundated with interest. So I told him we have to have rules, because in the motorcycle community, there are other motorcycle energies out there. Yeah. The outlaw side of things, and everybody kind of looks at a bike when you're old to town hard already. And when you're implying that you're a trained killer on motorcycles, like some of the outlaws do, well, we are actually trained killers. So we had to have a set of rules. So I wrote a constitution. This Dr. Lebrun published it. And within 2 months, we were very careful of who we accepted in the organization. They had to follow our ethos, which mirrors Department of National Defense and Veterans Affairs. And the Constitution and these people we attracted, within 2 months, we were national. In our first year, we were international. And we've had thousands.
What's the name of the organization?
The CAV is acronym CAV for Canadian Army Veteran.
Okay.
And we have 2 groups in our organization, which is key to our success: the veterans and veteran supporters, wives, best buddies. Yeah. So what we tried to do is every city across Canada who had veterans and someone who's on their side to support them, they would join our organization and they would create a unit, not a chapter, but a unit named after, because that's military nomenclature, a unit named after a battle honor in their area that their ancestors served or fought for. So in the biker outlaw world, if you name yourself after a town, it's about territory. Yeah. Well, if you name yourself after a battle honor where people from your town died, that identifies clearly what your path is.
You're honoring
the past with your actions today. Yeah. And all these different organizations, we would learn from year 1 in 2003. We're in our 23rd year now, going on 24 years.
Wow.
We would learn about an Afghanistan veteran who was taken in the war, or an Afghanistan veteran who was returned from the war, or a World War II veteran who needed a wheelchair, or kids with cancer, and veterans were supporting them. Hundreds and thousands of weird, strange. When the war in Afghanistan was going on, we brought home 158 of our dead to CP Trenton. I witnessed myself 150 of those repatriations. I watched 75 of our comrades, and some of them were friends of mine, dear friends of mine, come off those aircraft in aluminum transit caskets. Yeah. I watched 75 in Trenton, and I watched 75 in Toronto. We didn't miss a single one. We were there for all 158. I watched mothers throw themselves on their sons' caskets. And as hard as that was to do that, we would then be in contact with the families after. And if your son or daughter was a church person or Boy Scouts or loved hockey, we will ride and we will raise money. If it's service dogs that help people who are in harm's way, we will support them by handing you that check, and then you do with it as you will.
The families.
And that's where the fundraising started. And it wasn't long. In our first 5 years, we raised $5 million.
Wow.
And here we are 23, 24 years. It's just like we stopped counting a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the Governor General, at that point, they recognized us 8 years ago for raising $7 million for charity. But the charity side is golden, but the thing that really works is tying a veteran with a supporter, someone in their community. Because when you come out of the military, you've been away forever. And you go to your hometown or the town you retire in, these veteran supporters that gather around the vets in our CAB organization, they teach you how to fit back in again. Because you're in a charitable organization, you meet the mayor, you meet the chief of police, the fire department, you raise money for help and need in your community, and all of a sudden you're part of that community. So the tie of the veterans and the civilians, these veteran supporters in each community, has saved lives, many, many lives. And it's done great outreach. The charity side is one element of it, but the networking and the way that people can heal by fitting back into the community, because the Army, Air Force, Navy, they teach you how to go away and do your job. They don't teach you how to come home and fit back in again. So the physical injuries, the emotional injuries, the medical marijuana supports that. And the outreach that we have in our organization and through different outreach programs like the Veterans Channel. In the Veterans Channel, we reach tens of thousands of veterans every day. And we lay on the table equine therapy, service dogs, medical marijuana, anything you can do for fellowship that gets people together. And that's seen by tens of thousands of people every single day. So we ride to their activity. We show that activity on this Veterans Channel or outreach like that. And it saves lives, and it's made Canada a better place. Definitely.
That's amazing. In your network, whether you serve with them or since then, how many veterans have you seen lost to the streets, so to speak? And does it mostly derive from that big brown bag of drugs? Because an outstanding amount of veterans end up homeless proportionally to any other career. And it's a lot of what you said, but have you seen that personally? Do you have friends that ended up not making it out, or
it's one of those things where, like I say, I was just in Grand Prairie, the SOS, Soldiers of Suicide gathering. Mm-hmm. We had 22 families that have identified the willingness to have their son or daughter identified, because it's a hard subject. Suicide is one of those things that people are still uncomfortable talking with, especially if it's a member of their own family or someone in their community. People are really, really hesitant about opening up and reaching that darkness. This event in Grand Prairie, we've identified well over 370 Canadians who killed themselves because of their service. We only lost 158 in combat. Anita Chignorini, who was our National Silver Cross Mother in 2018, I carried her on my bike to Beechwood Cemetery, where we interviewed her for the Veterans Channel. Yeah. Her son, Tom, killed himself 3 months after he came back from Afghanistan. And his mom told us on camera how she knew he was in deep, deep trouble when he was still in Afghanistan. It was one of those situations where he had witnessed a horrible blast, an IED blast that killed a dear comrade of theirs, and he was having a hard time processing it. And his battle buddy, his best buddy, said, listen, you're supposed to go on patrol tomorrow. I've got a phone call that I got time on the computer, and you take my time on the computer. You talk to your mom, I'll take your position on patrol, and he was killed. So when Tom was on the phone to his mom, she knew right away he was going to wear the guilt of that death in addition to all the other deaths and horrors that he'd seen in Afghanistan. She was at the North Bay airport waiting for him on Mother's Day to come back from base Petawawa when the military police met her at the airport and said, you have to go home. Your son hung himself this morning in Petawawa. 13 years the military denied that his death was as a result of a military service. 13 years that woman fought. Finally, they identified that, yes, it was a direct result of a service. And yes, what he'd seen and gone through was a contributing factor to his taking his life. And that there was no shame in him taking his life. It was just, that was the way things were, and they understood it now. And they're slowly starting to accept it. But homeless people, like the most brilliant minds that I've ever worked with, I have a sniper, one of my snipers back west, who has a crystal meth problem.
Yeah.
$1,000 a week, $2,000 a week. And when I see him, I ask him, how do you pay for that? Well, he hustles. He does whatever he can. In his mind, he thinks it's not his fault, that it's the system's fault that he is the way he is. But if you get someone get them off that track, get them into, and the thing with medical marijuana is we don't just recommend they go get marijuana and keep themselves snowed.
Yeah.
You get them up on the radar. As soon as you get into the program, then we can start putting in other systems to understand what will work best for them. Motorcycles don't work for everybody. Medical marijuana doesn't work for everybody.
No.
But all the other stuff we know it doesn't work, we can guide them through that process. Service dogs, equine therapy, group gatherings, any kind of outreach that'll help them get through the darkness. But for in my case, mentally and physically, the CBDs during the day and the THC at night has been a life changer, as it is for thousands across this country.
What do you? I mean, you've been out of service for a while now, but I'm sure you have friends that are currently serving and acquaintances that are currently in the military. Is it any different now than it was when you left the military?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's different now, and is it different in a good way, or because you just mentioned it that the mother, that poor mother, had to argue for 13 years with the military about why her son actually committed suicide. And you hear these stories over and over and over again. I've heard them personally dozens of times, if of a veteran having to argue with the government about whatever it is. There was this ongoing news article from it was on CTV and CBC. It ran over the last few years about this veteran who had to keep proving that they lost a limb over and over again, right? Every year they had to go to Veterans Affairs and be like, my limb is still gone. I need this veteran support. So is it better? Is it getting better now for veterans that are exiting the military? Or is it still a struggle on all fronts?
The military is a strange culture.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, when you join, you sign a document for unlimited liability, which means you can be killed, you can kill others, you can be wounded, you can wound others, you can lose all your friends, and you're willing to do that. If you're a policeman or firefighter, there is no document that says you must get into a gunfight and willingly to be killed in the line of duty as a policeman. It happens all the time, but they don't go out there to be killed or kill others.
Yeah.
Firefighters, they're not ordered to go into a burning building and rescue something or somebody and die in the effect. It happens all the time, but that's not part of their job. In the infantry, in particular, your job is to close with and destroy the enemy. That's what we're paid for. So when you're in a culture where that is the job, and you've got officers who are giving the orders and the non-commissioned members who are carrying out those orders, your mindset is totally different from a policeman or firefighter.
Yeah.
Every single day you go to work, the phone could ring and you could be on an aircraft within 12 hours to some dirty, dark country where they don't have a fairy princess in charge, and you have to deal with the worst of the worst. So to get that done, the military culture demands certain things of you. And that unlimited liability is the first thing. You have to sign on the dotted line. Now, when you go through training, you're actually firing at human targets. You're shooting weapons at human targets. And it becomes really clear from basic training all the way till you retire that that is your role. So when you're in a military environment and these commanding officers and the NCMs, the non-commissioned members, who are moving you forward against death and against dismemberment, yours or the enemy's or that of your comrades, it's a real old culture where you can't have people weeping and crying. In the First World War, if you were lied about your age, as tens of thousands did, and you're 14, 15 years old, and you're watching artillery slaughter everybody around you, and the word is to move forward, if you're curled in a ball in the trench, in the First World War, they would shoot you dead as a coward.
Yeah.
That was considered cowardice, and it happened. There's more memorials here in New Brunswick where there is no name of a person who was killed because everybody knew when they came back in the First World War, that's what happened to that young man. And they didn't feel he was deserving of going on a monument. Well, times have changed. The officers and the NCMs don't kill you if you hesitate in battle. But if you hesitate in the training system, paratroopers, you jump out of an airplane knowing that you're trusting to yourself, God, if there's a packer rigger who did a good job that morning or not. You're trusting to a whole bunch of different elements, and you're trained to do that trust because you know everybody's in the same professional level you are. They have to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a natural thing to jump out of an airplane. When you're standing in the door and you look out at 1,000 feet and little tiny cows and little tiny houses, and then you step out of the aircraft, unless that aircraft is on fire, it's not something you would willingly do.
Yeah.
But they train you to do that and accept it like it was part of your day. Same with going under fire. When a bullet goes past you, you hear the crack thump. The crack is a hypervelocity projectile going by your head, and the thump is the noise of the weapon that fired it. So we learn to tell what direction they are and what distance they are by the noise of the bullets going by our head. And in reverse, when we're firing at somebody, if you fire at somebody and you hit the torso of the body, a sound comes back, a solid thump. And if you hit an arm or a leg, it's a higher pitched sound. So you're in a culture where that's your job, where you're looking at ways to hunt and kill human beings.
Yeah.
So mentally and physically, it's a whole different culture than a plumber, gas fitter, or firefighters or cops. But coming out of that environment where you're trained to shoot these targets and move forward, understanding that it could be your buddies, like when you're patching a target and you're putting bullet patches over bullet holes around the target's head, the target's chest, the target's crotch, it soon stops to becoming a human being, and it soon stops to becoming nothing but points, because the closer to the center, the higher your points are.
Yeah.
So your training is developing onto how to hunt and kill human beings, and subconsciously and physically, you're preparing yourself for that act all the time. So with military service and people who are exposed to, like we're talking earlier, civilian casualties and things, I can easily understand what it takes to move forward against tanks. I was trained to do that. I was trained to go against heavy machine gun fire. I was trained to go against snipers.
Yeah.
But when it comes to you're moving forward to engage with those things, and there's dead woman, dead child, dead woman, dead child, as you're moving forward, your brain starts to compartmentalize all these things.
Yes.
Because your job is to keep moving forward, and there's your buddy with a round hole in the middle of his forehead, someone who you got to go home on leave with him, meet his mom and dad, date his sister, get on motorcycles and have fun. All of a sudden, he's bleeding out. My youngest brother, Todd, I wake up every single night for 40 plus years seeing myself hit the ground from that parachute accident. Mm-hmm. My youngest brother, he served in Yugoslavia, served in Croatia, did 2 tours in Afghanistan. And for the rest of his life, he will wake up every single night trying to hold an Afghan National Police sergeant together, where a round hit him in the belly and you're cut him in half. And my baby brother held his 2 arteries shut for 48 minutes until he died. And my brother's on that rooftop every single day. They can train you and teach you how to handle everything else. But it's those other things that happen that your mind has to start to accept, and the injuries that happen to me, your body starts to have to accept. And it's a totally different culture, the military compared to everything else. So when it comes to therapies to treat that culture, you have to have comradeship. And that's a problem because people retire to the middle of Indian Head, Saskatchewan, and there's no one else that understands their experience. Yeah. Or you can even be in a culture with other veterans. But the World War II guys, Korea guys, don't understand the Afghan guys. And the Afghan guys will have a hard time understanding the North Korea, Poland, Ukraine combat guys in the years ahead. So every culture is hard on itself and different from the next culture before. So it's one of those deals where everybody has to help each other, and you have to have a medicine. You have to have a therapy that gets you into a system so that we can help you with other therapy methods, not only the marijuana, but group talks or different therapies. There's light therapies, there's counseling, there's all sorts of things we can do. But if they're just living in their basement in the dark, we don't know who they are until they put up their hand. And it's that culture change from that warrior culture to being a civilian. It just blows people's minds. And if you've already got injuries from medical or mental issues before, it's just compounded.
Yeah, that's the everything you just said there makes it completely apparent. How would you get out of the military without PTSD if you've seen any theater at all, if you've seen any combat action at all? One of the most unique pieces of feedback we had on our Stewart Farms products And veterans are the biggest consumer of our wellness products. We were on most of the medical platforms, was with our bath bombs. And we designed these bath bombs for a muscle relaxation and skin treatment. And there's an aromatherapy component to them. But the first time, and I've heard it multiple times now across the country from veterans, that a veteran told me, I use your bath bomb for my PTSD. That caught me completely off guard. It made sense immediately to me, whereas the act of having a medical bath, so to speak, and getting into the bathtub and closing the door and having that aromatherapy maneuver, it in itself, it's an act of self-care, right? And not for 1 second, when I started launching these bath bombs, did I understand that veterans would become the number one consumer of these things, and the broad range of issues that they would be used for. And, the PTSD comments, the first one caught me off guard, but then it made perfect sense, because it's the get away, get on their own. They're still getting that muscle relaxation and treatment. And, nothing hits harder than that, man. I mean, I got to tell you, it's an honor to have these products get to veterans across the country. So what's next for Trapper? What's the on more bike rides, more charity, more raising money, more outreach?
This year was a good, strong year. I rode out west to British Columbia and back, and then Ontario before that, and East Coast, West Coast riding. I'm 67 years old, and I imagine the time's going to come. I went over a pothole in Sault Ste. Marie a couple of weeks ago, and it was an unmarked construction site. And the transport in front of me hit the brakes, and all of a sudden I was surrounded by red light and somehow held onto it going through. And when I blasted through the other side, there was a 6-inch cut in the pavement that they hadn't marked. Yeah. How I didn't shatter the bike or break something. Well, I got to the hotel that night, and every night since then, and right up until today, I feel it in my back, my lower back. Yeah. I had a fusion, three steel rods in my spine. Yeah. They used my fibula from my left leg and my spine for strut graft, and they fused L3, 4, and 5. I hit that pothole, and I still feel it today. So I think I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to smarten up a little bit, that, riding tens of thousands of kilometers and all the potholes and the physical effect. So rather than, ride and rant and rave, it's probably time to fly and rent and get a bike under me and then drop it off and then get on a plane and come home. It's I love Canada. I've crossed it 19 times. Yeah. 19 times from Newfoundland to Yellowknife to Vancouver Island, and I literally know gas station attendants and hotel motel operators right across the country.
You got your regulars. You got the route, and you stop and visit them.
I years ago, I've been doing this 23 years. Yep. Years ago, I stopped at a restaurant / hotel in Quebec, and a lovely Chinese couple, and they were very nice to me, and I came back through later that summer, and there was another staffer on board, and I said, did they not make it in business? I know it's a hard business. He said, no, they're making love in the trees behind us. I said, excuse me? She said, in Chinese culture, under a full moon, if you can conceive a child, it's a powerful thing. Yeah. Well, sure enough, 9 months later, I'm going back and through, and she's quite pregnant. I was teasing her about the full moon, and she thought that was kind of funny that their staff told me. Yeah. Well, that kid is now in his early 20s. Yeah. Calls me Uncle Trapper. So every time I go there, I stay at the same hotels. Yeah. A gas station out west, a young guy, perfectly bilingual, young fella, good heart on him, good head, dealt with all the crazy customers and complained about his life. And I've heard that from a few people over the years. And I say, well, have you ever thought about the military? And I've got 6 that I've influenced to go in the military, and they've had wonderful careers. Yeah. This young gentleman, his dream was to be a security officer in a hospital nearby. And I thought, well, give me a piece of paper and a pen. Well, I'd known him for 5 years at that point, riding back and forth. So I wrote down, I've known this gentleman for 5 years. He's fully bilingual. He's got a good heart. He's got good charitable energy. He's a wonderful human being. And he got not only hired on as a security guard that he wanted at this hospital, all these years later, he's now the head of security in that. And he has a wife and a house and a family that probably would have been hard to do if he was just pumping gas. So the connection I had with Canada, with the different Silver Cross families, are incredible, beautiful people. We have dozens of them in our cab organization that ride with us and help us out. We started helping their son or daughter's memory by doing charitable rides. Well, now they've taken over entire units and run charity for other needs in their community. So we keep in touch with them. And it's a hard thing because like we have one Silver Cross mom that, I just was with her, and she told me that every night she dreams that it was all a mistake, that he wasn't killed in an IV blast in Panjway, that everything's fine. She's got grandkids, and then she wakes up in the morning and he's still dead. And these people have to face that every single birthday, Christmas, every single time the phone rings, someone wants an interview. Every time I ride into town, I'm sure it must hurt them a little bit. This is why he's here again. But together we can help heal, or as much as we can. Just last weekend, I was in Hebron, out by Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Incredible little community, Hebron. It's a 1800s Lebanese community. They come from the Far East and came here and they settled here, and they've been 100 plus years working in Nova Scotia.
They are the origin of the Donairs.
Exactly.
That community.
Exactly.
Well, that's thank God.
and like every culture that comes to our country brings something beautiful.
Yeah.
And these Lebanese, the First World War, this fellow named Joe Bashari, his uncle served, and one didn't come home. Second World War, same thing. So he's a teacher in a little tiny high school out in the middle of a corner of Nova Scotia. Started a memorial club for the youth because he knew their ancestors had all served, but the kids didn't know. So he started to reawaken their attention to what has gone on, but should never be forgotten. Mm-hmm. Your uncle, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, they died, they sacrificed, they served. So they started a memorial club. I just rode to Hebron just this last weekend, and they've got an Afghanistan monument that's better than anything the province has. It's like 20 feet long, black marble with great big carvings, all the names of the fallen, great big tributes in the center. And every year, these kids who are now adults, they come to this monument and they hold a ceremony. We ride our bikes in, and we gather with the Silver Cross families and as importantly, the people who served with these folks who were with them when they died overseas. Because even though they didn't fall, they can't be forgotten. And the soldiers of suicide, they'll never get their name on a marble monument, ever.
No.
But we pay tribute to their family and their service and their sacrifice. This years ago, the guy named Dave Sofa, a gentleman who died in the Veterans Channel, had 60,000 views looking at the Portrait of Honor, the 158 faces that he painted in oil. It's 60 feet long and it's 15 feet high, and it had all 158 of the fallen on there. And it went right across Canada. And some of the moms of soldiers who took their own lives said, well, how come we can't have our son or daughter's painting with the people they served with in Afghanistan? And the Department of National Defense, who gave him permission, who actually gave him the photographs to paint the oil paintings of the fallen 158, they said, if we've got someone out there who's on the edge and thinks that their life doesn't matter, thinks that their service and sacrifice doesn't matter, and they're going to kill themselves, it might push them over the edge if they think they're going to get their portrait painted. So D&D said no. A little lady, a little French lady named Lise Charon wasn't happy with that answer. Yeah. So she started the Soldiers of Suicide program, where if you're willing to let us pay tribute to your son or daughter who took themselves out of this world because of their service overseas, we'll pay tribute to them. And what they do is they have a candle program. And we go to the graves, we go to the families, we have ceremonies like we did in Grand Prairie, where we have these lighted candles and these lanterns, and we place them in memory of these fallen people. But all these different ways to pay respect to those who served and those who fell after service, and the families who supported them, and the soldiers who were with them when it all happened. In 1938, just south of here, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, they had the 75th anniversary of the 3-day Battle of Gettysburg, and 2,500 veterans showed up 75 years later. So the fighting in Afghanistan, this pebble in a pond ripple effect is going to continue through families forever and through our Canadian family for generations.
Yeah.
So we're doing our best to show support and respect all those who fell, all those who served, and those who took their lives because of that service and sacrifice.
That's amazing. Well, Trapper, you truly are an unstoppable human, and I'm honored to know you and to have to have this time with you and to have experienced the CPC convention moments that we had together, and I look forward to just staying in touch and seeing everybody that you
Absolutely.
know.
Absolutely. Count me in.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.